You know, when you think about the great empires that really shaped our world, a few big names always pop up. They're the ones we all know, the household names of history. Like,
First up, of course, the Roman Empire. I mean, their laws, their architecture, their language, it basically laid the groundwork for all of Western civilization. Or, hey, maybe you think of
The Mongol Empire. I mean, what an unstoppable force, right? They created the largest land empire ever, completely redrawing the map from the Pacific all the way to the heart of Europe. These are the empires we all learn about in school.
But what if I told you there was another one? An empire that, back in the 14th century, rose up deep in Southeast Asia to rival even them. A massive maritime superpower that literally held the keys to the most valuable trade on the entire planet. This was the Majapahit Empire. And let me tell you, at its peak, this thing was a monster. A maritime superpower whose influence stretched all across the islands of modern-day Indonesia, Malaysia, and even parts of the Philippines. It was a true global player, and this is the crazy part, outside of Southeast Asia, it's almost completely forgotten. Well, that's going to change today.
Look, every great empire has a cool origin story, right? But Majapahit's, wow, it is something straight out of a Hollywood blockbuster. We're talking a tale of invasion, incredible cunning, and honestly, one of the most gutsy betrayals in all of military history. Okay, so picture this. The year is 1293. The legendary Mongol ruler Kublai Khan is absolutely furious. See, some Javanese king had insulted his envoy, and Khan was not having it. So he sends this massive invasion force. We're talking 1,000 ships and 20,000 soldiers to go teach this island a lesson.
and this is where our hero, or maybe anti-hero, enters the picture. A guy named Raden Wijaya. He's a Javanese prince who had actually been kicked out of his own kingdom. And when he sees this Mongol armada showing up, he doesn't see a threat. No, he sees a golden opportunity.
His plan was just audacious. It unfolds in 4 brilliant, absolutely genius steps. First, he allies with the Mongols. He uses their muscle to crush his own Javanese rivals. Then, just as the Mongols are celebrating their victory, he pulls off this stunning double cross. He turns on his now exhausted allies, ambushes them, and drives them right off the island for good. Incredible.
So from the ashes of all that chaos, Raden Wijaya founds his new capital, and he names it Majapahit, which actually comes from the bitter maja fruit that grew in the area. Now just stop and think about that for a second. This legendary empire, its birth certificate is signed by achieving the impossible. It defeated the Mongols. So with a beginning like that, you just know Majapahit was destined for greatness, right? This whole wild story set the stage perfectly for its golden age, the time when it would become a true, undisputed global power. All right, so this peak happens in the mid-14th century, under a king named Hayam Wuruk. But the real architect, the true mastermind behind the empire's greatness, that was his prime minister, a man who was just a genuine force of nature, Gajah Mada.
This guy, Gajah Mada, was driven by this singular, massive ambition. He laid it all out in his famous Palapa oath. Get this, he vowed he wouldn't even taste spiced food, which in that part of the world is a huge sacrifice, until he had united the entire Southeast Asian archipelago, what they called Nusantara, under the rules of Majapahit.
And the incredible thing is, he almost did it. Under his leadership, Majapahit's influence just exploded into this staggering territory. I mean, just look at its reach. It's covering all of modern Java, Sumatra, Borneo, the Malay Peninsula, and even touching parts of the Philippines and Thailand. This wasn't just big, this was a truly massive domain.
At its absolute peak, this empire held sway over a region with an estimated 100 million people. To put that in perspective, that's a population that could go toe-to-toe with any of the great empires in Europe or Asia at the time. So, to operate on that kind of scale, you need an insane amount of wealth. Which begs the question, what was fueling this incredible expansion?
Well, the answer boils down to one of the most valuable things the world has ever known: spices.
You know, it's kind of hard for us to wrap our heads around today, but back in the 14th century, spices like nutmeg and cloves were literally worth more than their weight in gold. Think about it. The entire age of exploration was basically kicked off because Europe was desperate to find and control the source of these spices.
And that was the secret to Majapahit's power. See, they weren't just some other middleman on a trade route. No, they were the source. They controlled the legendary Spice Islands, which was the only place on the entire planet where these precious things actually grew.
And that gave them unbelievable geopolitical leverage. I mean, any merchant from China, India, Persia, anybody who wanted to get rich off the spice trade had to go through Majapahit-controlled waters and ports. No exceptions. They effectively held the keys to the global economy of their time.
It's that simple.
But, as we all know, all great empires fall eventually. It's just the way things go. And for Majapahit, its decline came from the inside, right after the deaths of its two greatest leaders, Hayam Wuruk and the great Gajah Mada.
Yeah, without their unifying leadership, things just fell apart. A brutal civil war over who should take the throne, the Paragarag War, erupted, and that conflict just fatally weakened the empire. Over the next 100 years or so, it just slowly fragmented and faded away.
So, is that it? Is that the end of the story? An empire rises, it falls, and it just turns to dust, completely forgotten by history? End of chapter?
No, not even close. The thing is, Majapahit never really disappeared. Its legacy is alive and well, literally woven into the fabric of Southeast Asia today. You can actually see it in the language people speak. Bahasa Indonesia, it evolved from the common trade language of the Majapahit era. You can see it in their national identity. The Garuda emblem, that was a divine symbol for the empire. And maybe most remarkably of all, you can see it in their future. Indonesia's brand new capital city is being named Nusantara. That's a direct callback to Gajah Mada's 700-year-old dream of unity. How cool is that?
So why? Why have so few of us ever heard of this incredible empire? Well, maybe it's because history, as they say, is usually written by the victors of a later age. Majapahit may have been kind of written out of the global textbooks, but its story proves that modern Indonesia is a civilization with a history that's just as deep, just as complex, and just as awe-inspiring as any other on Earth. And now, you're in on the secret.